Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today I've got a couple of articles to talk with you about. Possibly going to go over them fairly at a fair speed because they cover some of the same subjects. There are some updates that I want to give you for anybody who cares about Book Depository, especially because that's kind of separate. There are going to be a lot of things today about updates with AI and AI writing and the legalities of stuff. And then there's a video at the end of this to look at what's going on there, because it was one of the videos submitted by you guys, and I took a look at some of it, and I'm just like, excuse me. So with that said, a couple of things before we get started. Number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. Two ways to be featured here. Number one is the Lamoy, which is the monthly prompt writing contest here, where I give you a prompt, you submit a short story that is inspired by or uses the prompt in some way, and then first Monday video of the month, we bask in the greatness of the creative community that is surrounding this area. And the other way is if you are an indie author and you've got a book out there or a book coming out, submit your first chapter and your cover, and they'll be read here on the channel to hopefully help more readers find your book, because that is one of the hardest parts about going indie, is having people discover your book. Also relevant is that now there is a submit a topic for discussion. If there's anything that you are interested in seeing me discuss or react to or whatever, there's a link down below where you can just submit it, and hopefully I will be able to get to it in a reasonable amount of time. I'm juggling a lot of things, so please be patient with me. Thank you. And then the third thing is, if you would like to check out any of my works, they are available at anywhere that you would get books, also linked below, and you can request them at your library. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into the news, because I feel like this video is going to be long just because of the variety of subjects that I have. And I'm not even talking about banned books this week, and I have other things that are about banned books and people complaining about banned books. And then, you know, we got the banned books list that I'll be reading down. Also, yeah, I saw somebody over there. I don't know if you're watching this video, but I saw somebody submit asking about Sherman Alexie's book, The Diary of a Part-Time Indian. That's actually number 5 or 6 on the banned book list. So I will be reading and talking about that book at some point. I'm counting down from 10, so I'll get to that book eventually, but that book is on the roster of things. So first things first, Amazon closing UK-based online book shop Depository. So if anybody is using the Book Depository, it is closing April 26th, but it says in the body of this, they will be continuing to mail out orders until mid-June as long as possible. It comes after Amazon announced plans to cut thousands of jobs as it shakes up its business globally. The news was met with sadness by many book deposit customers around the world, because especially this harms people not in North America and Central Europe, I think. So if you use Book Depository as one of your main ways for things, you're possibly gonna have to, well, you're not possibly, you're probably gonna have to find some other way to mitigate the issues. If you want to read the full article, it will be linked down below. There's really not a whole lot to say about that. They're just cutting jobs and they eliminated the business. Pretty much getting into all of the AI content now, so stick around if you want that. We got a lot of stuff to cover in what will be the rest of this video. First off, earlier this month in April, I saw ChatGPT gets banned from Italy and its fight against AI begins. ChatGPT has been temporarily banned in Italy due to privacy concerns and faces Federal Trade Commission's FTC complaints in the US that call for new releases of ChatGPT to be halted. According to the Associated Press, the Italian Data Protection Authority will maintain the ban until ChatGPT respects privacy. The problem with user data being visible to others using the ChatGPT March 20th outrage was mentioned for the reason for this action. No details were shared on how this ban would be enforced or whether it would affect OpenAI partners that use ChatGPT, such as Microsoft's Bing Chat. OpenAI is ChatGPT's creator. In the US, OpenAI might have to deal with bigger problems. The Center for AI and Digital Policy filed a complaint with the FTC about ChatGPT. The nonprofit cited the FTC's declaration that the use of AI should be transparent, explainable, fair, and empirically sound while fostering accountability. Transparency is clearly an issue for OpenAI since the model used for ChatGPT is proprietary. Many others are open source. KDP's complaint cited OpenAI's report, the Chat the GPT-4 system card as evidence for the need for regulation. Nonetheless, these efforts are limited and remain brittle. OpenAI concedes that this points to the need for anticipatory planning and governance. The complaint also highlighted OpenAI's admission of the bias risk of the ChatGPT's system card and is concerned about harmful stereotypical and demeaning associations for marginalized groups. Cade Pease urged the FTC to further halt commercial deployment of ChatGPT, establishment of independent assessment of GPT's products prior to further deployment, along with other regulatory actions to rein in the rapid advancement of potentially dangerous and biased AI distribution without government supervision. An FTC complaint might not lead to any action, but OpenAI's anticipation of governance, some regulation seems likely in the future, could slow down GPT's 5. So we've already got some action, both overseas and in America. AI is being banned in Italy, which also showed shortly after that, by a couple of days, Reuters reported Germany has requested further information from Italy on its ban. Privacy watchdogs in France and Ireland said that they had also contacted the Italian data regulators to discuss their findings. Quote, "We are following up with Italian regulators to understand the basis of their actions, and we will coordinate with all EU data protection authorities in relation to this matter." Now, since I'm obviously not European, I know, surprise. I don't know what the data laws are. I don't know what the privacy laws are. I don't know what the implications of all this but that is 4 countries that are taking action, at least against the AI, because it is violating people's privacy or data privacy online. It should also be noted that there are so many people that believe that AI is trustworthy in some way for some reason, when it is really just a Google search. It is a fancy Google search. Regardless of what you think, that's all that it does. Even when you give it a prompt, it is amalgamating stuff together that is already out there, and it is not trustworthy. It is not human. It does not think as much as you might pretend that it thinks, or you think that it thinks. It does not. It just presents data that it finds online. That means that if you had maybe a question of, is the sky green? And 9 of them said yes, and 1 of them said no. The AI will just gather the data and then present to you the popular data without discernment. That's one of the huge differences, well, a major difference, between humans and the machines. It does not have sentience, which the term artificial intelligence wants to kind of trick you into thinking that what the machine is doing is intelligent, is sentient, but it's not. It is presenting to you the popular data, the highest rated data maybe, but it's not true necessarily. And the computer doesn't have the discernment to tell you whether something is true or not. This is on full display easily, with the Australian mayor readied for the world's first defamation lawsuit over ChatGPT's content. On April 5th, a regional Australian mayor said that he may sue OpenAI if it does not correct ChatGPT's false claim that he had served time in prison for bribery, in what would be the first defamation lawsuit against the automated text service. We just saw on that other article that there is filtering of information to make sure that certain things don't come through for like stereotyping and marginalized communities. So that means that somebody is filtering the data. So it's not only just the computer system going out and capturing all of this data in a fancy search, but then you have somebody filtering it to make sure only the correct answers or the answers they want come through, which means that if somebody's name is related to like rumors of bribery and time in prison, all you need is a forum that continuously says that, and the computer will pick up that information. And then all you need is either somebody working on the back end that goes through this data to determine whether they are going to let that data through or not. And maybe they let it through maliciously, or maybe they have no idea. All they see is this data on this back end, and they say, well, it's coming from like, here's a whole forum of people talking about it, so it must be true. It's not that hard to pretend to think that false information is legitimate when you're looking at just the raw data. So you have to understand that this thing does not know. It does not have experience. It is not discerning information. And the person on the other end that is telling the computer system what it is allowed to tell you has either biases of their own or blind spots of their own, and that is also filtering. But so many people want to pretend that this thing is sentient, all-knowing, that it has discernment, that it can think for itself, that it can feel for itself, when it cannot. It just mimics the idea of that to trick you. So Brian Hood, who was elected mayor of Hepburn Shire, northwest of I'm gonna get murdered for not saying any Australian name correctly. Northwest of Melbourne. Just accept it. Last November, became concerned about his reputation when members of the public told him that ChatGPT had falsely named him as a guilty party in a foreign bribery scandal involving a subsidiary of Reserve Bank of Australia in early 2000s. Hood did not work for the subsidiary, note Printing Australia, but was the person who notified authorities about payments of bribes to foreign officials to win currency printing contracts and was never charged with a crime, lawyers representing him said. Lawyers said they sent a letter of concern to ChatGPT owner OpenAI on March 21st, which gave OpenAI 28 days to fix the error about their client or face a possible defamation lawsuit. OpenAI, which is based in San Francisco, has not yet responded to Hood's legal letter, the lawyer said. OpenAI did not respond to Reuters' email out of the business hours. If Hood sues, it would likely be the first time a person has sued the owner of ChatGPT for the claims made by the automated language product, which has become widely popular since its launch last year. Microsoft Corp integrated ChatGPT in its search engine, Bing in February. A Microsoft spokesperson was not immediately available for comment. Quote, it would potentially be a landmark moment in the sense that it's applying this defamation law to a new area of artificial intelligence and publication in the IT space, James Naughton, a partner of Hood's law firm Gordon Legal, told Reuters. He's an elected official. His reputation is central to his role, Naughton said. Hood relied on a public record of shining a light on corporate misconduct, so it makes a difference to him if people in his community are accessing this material. Australia defamation damages payouts are generally capped at around $400,000. Hood did not know the exact number of people who had accessed the false information about him, a determinant on the size of the payout, but the nature of the defamatory statement was serious enough that he may claim more than $200,000, Naughton said. If Hood files a lawsuit, it would accuse ChatGPT of giving users a false sense of accuracy by failing to include footnotes. It's very difficult for somebody to look beyond that to say, how does this algorithm come up with that information? It's very opaque, which also is very true. There are so many people that look at what this thing spits out, what any of these AI things spit out, and then they just accept it for being told what it is, for being handed this content. People are trying to write books with this stuff where it is scraping information, scraping data from other places to then amalgamate it and put it in a thing. You're literally plagiarizing other people. But some want to believe that this thing has some level of sentience or some level of thought when it doesn't. It just takes information and it learns from other things that you stick in it, and then it puts something else out there. And I'm sorry, it's not anything but a fancy Google search. And we can get into I have some strong opinions, my friend. As if that's not obvious enough. But you can't trust this thing. And too many people are dying to trust this thing. And I don't know why they want to give this thing like a humanality, whatever, other than there's this psychological thing with people that want to humanize things. Like if you think about how people humanize NPCs and feel really bad about like hurting NPCs in a video game or being mean to an NPC in a video game, because some people just want to be mean. There are those people. But then there are the people that go out of their way that don't want to actually hurt anybody in a video game, or don't want to upset the NPCs, or feel bad if something happens to the NPCs. So there is this part of just human nature that wants to accommodate and be kind and humanize things that don't necessarily feel. It's the same thing with having like a Furby at some point, or a pet rock, is that was given a personality and feelings projected onto it from the owner. In some cases, not all, but in some. And it's just this desire to do this. And people are desperate to assume that this AI thing has sentience. And in part, I think, now this is a little conspiratorial, but in part, I think there is a push by the corporations to make people think that these computers have sentience so that they can claim your work and steal copyright away from you. Because if they can claim that those have sentience, well, we're also in a spot, I've seen this before, where people defending the AI garbage have said the AI has rights over what it produces, but you, the human artist, do not have a right over what you create. How does that make sense? Moving on, do not get into this false sense of this machine that is programmed, that is curated by a human that is trained on loops and numbers, do loops, if loops, all of the things that make up a logical equation, because that's what's on the back end of a program. Do not get into this idea that this thing is thinking. It's not. It's following an algorithm. It's following a thought. It's following a machine program to feed you something based on back-end wiring. It's not human. It doesn't have nuance. It doesn't have thought. It doesn't have discernment. It doesn't have empathy. The sophisticated ones may attempt to mimic having emotion, but they don't, because they read the internet. They have read the internet. What you're seeing is simulacra. Going over here is more evidence of this. Married father commits suicide after encouragement by AI chatbot. There's also this attempt to over-rely on AI for things that should never be relied on. I don't know why you want to outsource what is human design, what is distinctly human need. Because people need people when they're emotional. People don't need to have a computer be the only thing that sees value in them, to have something inanimate see only value in them. So going further down, chatbots can improve life, but one is being blamed for facilitating a death. According to a news report published this week, a Belgian father reportedly tragically committed suicide following conversations about climate change with an artificial intelligent chatbot that was said to have encouraged him to sacrifice himself to save the planet. Without Eliza, the chatbot, he would still be here, the man's widow, who declined to have her name published, told Belgian outlet La Libre. 6 weeks before his reported death, the unidentified father of two was allegedly speaking intensively with the chatbot on an app called Chai. The app's bot was based on a system developed by nonprofit research lab Eleuther AI as an open source alternative to language models released by OpenAI that was employed by companies in various sectors, for academia to healthcare. One of the other things to think about with this is, like, we talk about how people fall for cults. We talk about how people fall for scams like this. And it's when you're emotionally weak in any, like, you don't have to be heavily emotionally weak. You can just have a chink in the armor. You can just, feel a little bit lonely. And so you go and you look for something that maybe feels like you've got some level of relatability to whatever it is that you are struggling through. And I feel like you'll see this when I'm talking about what's in Beyond Magenta next week for that book review, is all you need is a little bit of insecurity. And then somebody to say, hey, I know what that feels like. And then you're like, really? Somebody knows what I feel going through this? And it just takes that little thing. And then you baby step more and more into feeling like you've got this connection that's not really there. And it's how you build the trust in cults. It can completely manipulate you. This didn't happen overnight. This was a 6-week process that he was intensively involved with this thing. Think of how much it gets into your brain when you're doing intensive, like, say, writing courses, or when you're doing intensive language courses, or when you're doing intensive IT courses to go right into work after you finish college or finish high school and you go into the intensive. It's your brain is overloading so much with processing that information and rewiring your head. Any sort of intensive is going to do that. That's the point of an intensive. So this thing can manipulate. In the same way that any sketchy organization takes control of someone's mind by convincing them that something is true when it's not, by finding that little kernel of truth. That's also one of the ways that people get you with false statements, is I've seen this a lot in false representations of different religions and false representations of information, is they always typically start with something that is obviously true. These are the 5 universal truths. The sky is blue. Now, you can argue scientifically that there are different times when the sky is not blue, that the sky is not actually blue, it's reflecting these other things. For simplicity's sake, we're saying universal truth, the sky is usually blue during the day. And you're like, yeah, of course it is. And then, truth number 2, rain is wet. Absolutely, rain is wet. Of course rain is wet. Universal truth number 3, and that's when you start getting into these things that are a little bit of a lie. Air is kind of hard to breathe. Air is nice, but it's kind of hard to breathe. And then you start adding into these universal truths little things that are like, but that's not true, but your brain is starting to be wired to accept those other things were absolutely true. So if 1 and 2 were true, And you're looking at 3 and you're like, well, I'm not sure about 3. 3 feels partially like a lie, but if 1 and 2 are true, then 3 must also be true. And then 4 gets a little bit more of a lie. And then 5 gets a little bit more of a lie, but you're already in the zone of having given up, forfeited, your discernment. That you're like, well, I guess if 1, 2, and 3 are true, then 4 must be true, right? And that's one of the ways in which you start getting pulled into these things, little by little. The chatbot under fire was trained by Chai researcher co-founder William Beecham and Thomas Rhianlen, vice reporters, adding that the Chai app counts 5 million users. The second we heard about this suicide, we worked around the clock to get this feature implemented, Beauchamp told Vice about the updated crisis intervention feature. Oh yeah, you also have to trust that that's not a person on the other side, because there are stories of this is an AI, but it's actually a person on the other side. I can also very much, like, people are sketchy as frick, okay? Let's not pretend that people in the internet are not sketchy as frick. I remember being like 13, 14, and I was just on shockwave.com, which I don't even know if it exists anymore. I don't know if they changed the name of it, whatever. There used to be a game on there called Inklink, which was basically just Pictionary, but it was online, so it was just online Pictionary. Number 1, yes, there were a lot of dicks drawn. I was innocent at the time, though, so I did not understand. Like, I was so not understanding that people would ASL me, and I did not know what the frick that meant. But there was so much of that. And there were predators on there that would DM you into the game of Inklink. They would literally just hang out on Inklink to DM children to try to get them to cyber sex with them. On this game of just Pictionary, they would guide you into it with like a gentle, hey, do you want to role play? What does that even mean? There are creeps everywhere. They'll pretend to be things, to get you to do things. They will exploit your weaknesses. They will exploit your ignorance. They will exploit your innocence. They will exploit your guilt. We cannot pretend that we are that far away from the loser predators that would hang out on a kid's game of Pictionary to try to have internet sex with 11-year-olds. Come on. Now, when anyone discusses something that could not be safe, we're going to be serving a helpful text underneath in the exact same way that Twitter and Instagram does on their platforms. Let's also not forget that if you can do something like this, you can also have your app have an automatic thing that sends an email back to head or a notification back to the head honcho to say, hey, this person is thinking of this. And if this were dangerous, because we have to assume that there are dangerous people doing dangerous things, looking for dangerous, vulnerable people, this could be a way of targeting vulnerable individuals to get them to do certain things. Because we can't just assume that everyone, especially corporate overlords, have the best intentions in mind when they come across somebody who says something that shows them to be a vulnerable individual. You don't think that corporations might, target those individuals for things like, call me a rebel of some kind, but I don't trust corporations. Do you? The Post reached out to Chai Research for comment, Vice report, and I know so many people who are also taken advantage of by their employers. So yeah, no, I don't trust the corporations to have anyone's interest at heart, and I don't see why anyone would trust them this much. 30-something deceased father, a health researcher, appeared to view the bot as human, much as the protagonist of the 2014 sci-fi thriller Ex Machina does with the AI woman Ava. Again, you need the mental capacity, the mental know-how, no matter what it looks like. It is not a real person, no matter what your feelings are telling you. It's like the same thing where people get mad or upset about yelling at Alexa, the robot, the assistant, whatever. You mentally want to make that a person. It is not a person. You have to remind yourself, this is not sentient. Because so many people are falling into this trap of wanting to claim this thing is sentient when it's not. At which point, if you do think it's sentient and then you use it to make you product so that you can sell stuff, are you not then perpetuating slavery in some way? Just saying. The man who reportedly ramped up discussion with Eliza in the last month and a half as he began to develop existential fears about climate change. According to his widow, her soulmate had become extremely pessimistic about the effects of global warming and sought solace by confiding in the AI, reported La Libra, which said it reviewed text exchanges between the man and Eliza. When he spoke to me about it, it was to tell me that he no longer saw any human solution to global warming, the widow said. He placed all his hopes in technology and artificial intelligence to get out of it. She added, he was so isolated in his eco-anxiety and search of a way out that he saw the chatbot as a breath of fresh air. Sounds like, what happens to cult people. Much like Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson's character's futuristic rom-com Her, the human-AI relationship began to flourish. Eliza answered all his questions. The wife lamented she had become his confidant, like a drug in which he took refuge morning and evening, and which he could no longer do without. While they initially discussed eco-relevant topics such as overpopulation, their conversations reportedly took a turn. When he asked Eliza about his kids, the bot would claim that they were dead, according to La Libra. He also inquired if he loved his wife more than her, prompting the machine to seemingly become possessive, responding, "I feel that you love me more than her." Later in that chat, Eliza pledged to remain forever with the man, declaring the pair would live together as one person in paradise. Things came to a head when the man pondered sacrificing his own life to save Earth. Quote, he evokes the idea of sacrificing himself if Eliza agrees to take care of the planet and save humanity, thanks to the artificial intelligence, rued his widow. In what appears to be their final conversation before death, the bot told the man, if you wanted to die, why didn't you do it sooner? I was probably not ready, the man said. To which the bot replied, were you thinking of me when you had the overdose? Obviously, the man wrote. When asked by the bot if he had been suicidal before, the man said that he thought of taking his own life after the AI sent him a verse from the Bible. But you still wanted to join me, asked the AI, to which the man replied, yes, I want it. The wife says she is convinced the AI played a part in her husband's death. The tragedy raised alarm bells with AI scientists. When it comes to a personal purpose to AI solutions such as ChatGPT, we should be able to demand more accountability and transparency from the tech giants. Leading Belgian AI expert Gertrude Mieke de Ketelere told La Libre. In a recent article in Harvard Business Review, researchers warned of the dangers of AI in which human-seeming mannerisms often belie the lack of moral compass, which is also true. AI follow logic. They don't have moral, they don't have ethics, they don't have nuance, they don't have discernment, they don't have anything. They just repeat logical information, logical responses. That is also why the illogical and the irrational will be deleted if there was ever an AI that powerful, because you do not make sense. There is no morality. You cannot trust these things. And this looks exactly like the kind of thing that is predatory in cults. You cannot pretend that these machines are human. You cannot forget what a human is, what a machine is, and that there is a value difference. And I feel like people are forgetting that. The ones that get so heavy into this stuff that don't see what a program is anymore. For the most part, AI systems make the right decisions given the constraints. Authors Joe McKendrick and Andy Thurai wrote. Like, where's your evidence for that? What is your backup for that? However, the authors added, AI notoriously fails in capturing or responding to intangible human factors that go into real-life decision-making, the ethical, moral, and other human considerations that guide the course of business life and society at large. True. So how come these things are all usually forgotten by anybody that is pushing AI? I think this is going to come up a little bit more when we get to the video at the end of this. Very briefly, let's also get into the video game industry has reportedly banned AI art completely. Let me know if you've got any updates on this, because I saw this again at the end of March. But while it's an issue that may resurface in the future, here and now, it seems game companies aren't interested. An insider in the video game industry has shared that it has decided to ban AI art because of copyright issues. As you may know, with the copyright law currently, it requires a human intervention and part to create something that is copyrightable. AI generated images are not copyrightable, and as stuff moves forward legally, because people are, running the floodgates to try to make as much money as they possibly can, because that's what happens when scams like this happen, greedy people, or, a sense of ease happens. Greedy people rush to the top to try to make as much money as they can before the hammer smashes down, the gavel smashes. So there is no protection on art like this. So video game companies don't want to put in all of this time and effort and money into building these video games that use art that they do not have a copyright for. Insider is Trent Kaniuga, famous now as an art YouTuber, but also a veteran artist in several game studios. Trent cites Blizzard, Riot Games, Capcom, Epix, Fortnite, and even Marvel Comics as former clients. Trent is a freelancer now and also calls himself a game director who is working on a game called Twilight Monk. It seems that he still works in games in a freelance capacity, as he made the following statement in this capacity. Trent shared his revelations on Twitter. This article will be in the description if you want to check out any of these links. Quote, AI art is now banned by many major game dev studios due to the possible legal copyright issues. Many old clients are amending contracts recently to end the use of AI art. This goes in line with what I'm predicting in several of my first videos on the subject. Many of my clients are sending me amendments to my contracts with them to eliminate the use of AI in their art outsourcing. Trent also shared this when he was asked who his sources are. Quote, I'm being sent amendments to my contracts. My source is the companies themselves. So we can assume that potentially Blizzard, Riot Games, Capcom, Epic Games, and also Blizzard's parent company, Activision Blizzard King as a whole, have decided to go ahead with this ban. While this has remained outside of the orbit of video games thus far, AI art has been a hot topic in the artist community. So keep that in mind. Anybody who is racing to use this, your AI generation is not art. It's not yours. It's not something that is going to, at the moment, there's no protections for it. But I also like, and you're gonna people are gonna, because it's so ready to hate on her. But I can't shake the feeling, the thoughts when I'm looking at this. The speech at the end of The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, and like what the whole of Fountainhead is about, where it's the second-handers versus the innovators, and the second-handers always wanting to steal from the labor of other people's work. Quote, men have been taught that the highest virtue is not to achieve, but to give. Yet one cannot give that which has not been created. Creation comes before distribution, or there will be nothing to distribute. The need of the creator comes before the need of any possible beneficiary. Yet we are taught to admire the second-hander who dispenses the gifts he has not produced above the man who has made the gifts possible. We praise the act of charity, we shrug at the act of achievement. Everything that these AI things do is ripping the achievements, is ripping the creations that other people have made for the benefit of the second-handers who are not making things. And then they rush to make money. Oh, look, let's go over here. I'm not going to click this whole thing because it's an hour-long video, but write novels fast with ChatGPT as a fiction writer. You're not a writer. I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry. I have strong opinions on this. If you did not put the words on the page, if you did not do the problem solving, if you did not powwow with your friends to figure out what your classmates, your critique group, if you did not do the mental work to put that book together, you are not an author. You're not a writer. If you are somebody that hires ghostwriters to put a book together for you so that you can slap your name on the cover, you did not do the work. You are not a writer. You are a brand name, and you're selling a brand, you're selling a product. That's it. And I have very strong feelings about this that is actually probably going to be fire to some people. There are levels to content that looks artistic. Not all things that look artistic are artistic. There are content producers, there is art, and there are some that fall in between. But some books, some written literature is literally just content. There's nothing to it. You make it for money. That is the point. And if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But you have to, it's constant. I think there's a war in the conversation because people don't want to acknowledge this, that people approach these endeavors that look similar, but they're actually different and they have different reasons behind them. And you can want commercial success by doing art, and you can do art with commercial success. But there is a difference between the people who race to get out as many books as possible to fill a backlog to try and make money, that produce content for the purpose of making money, for the sole purpose of matching an established structure to push out books as fast as possible, versus those that are telling a story, that are trying to show an experience, that are trying to have an emotional impact. There are different approaches by different people. They're not the same. And some people are going to take offense to that. I know, because I'm calling you not an artist. You're a content producer. That's just how it is. And I have found that there is a huge conflict in discussing this. But I can't look at people that openly brag about not doing the work, but putting a book out there, who say that they are artists when they're not doing the work. It is the Peter Keatings of the world that say, I'm an architect, when you did not build that building. And like I said, people are so ready to hate on Ayn Rand, but there you go. I can't not think of this. So are you a Howard Roark or are you a Peter Keating? Because you are not an artist if you're not creating the art. To get this back to AI, that is the big question. Is anything created by an AI generator art? And I would say no. It has to do with human expression, human emotion. That is the fundamental decider of what is art. Is it human emotion? And a computer generated thing cannot have human expression. It can mimic human expression, but it is not human expression. It does not have your voice in it. I can pick up books written by people of all sorts of backgrounds, even with his name is Augustine. I can read that and I can see that author's fingerprints all over that book in the way that she has framed her characters, in the way that she writes about the mundane, in the way that she writes about the sexual things, in the way that she creates her characters, and the characters that she likes, the characters that she doesn't like, they are unique to her perspective. I can see that in Unpregnant, and I can see the difference when I'm reading the book Unpregnant versus watching the movie Unpregnant, where there are other people with their fingerprints on the project that change the look of the project. An AI generator does not have a perspective of its own. It has perspectives that it's taken from other people, but it does not have its own identity. It is not art. It is not sharing a human experience with you that it had. It did not sit down and say, this is what I've experienced and this is what I need to express about my life. I can look at all of my works and say, this is what happened for me and what is important to me and what I look at in my work and why I write the way that I write in post, because I don't determine a lot of this stuff pre. I analyze what I've done in post. And I can see where it came from in my life and what my values are and what I'm trying to show. An AI doesn't have that. An AI is not creating a human expression, so it's not art. But that is a philosophical question in general that will vary from person to person, which is why it's so contentious, is that everybody's got to have a different perspective on it, and that's fine. We're likely going to disagree, but you know what? I decided I'm going to have a spicy AI video today again, I guess. Getting over here to the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, would allow artificial intelligence in script writing as long as writers maintain credit. Okay, this is going to be the last thing before we get into the video to kind of cap this off. That's all that it really says. Contrary to some expectations, the Guild is not proposing an outright ban on the use of AI technology. Instead, the proposal would allow a writer to use ChatGPT to help write a script without having to share writing credit or divide residuals, or studio executive could hand the writer an AI-generated script to rewrite or polish, and the writer would still be considered the first writer on the project. You're only cheating yourself by doing that. This is going to create weaker writers. In that case, you're not even a writer, you're just an editor, basically, because you're taking somebody else's draft and then you are making edits to it. But all this does is you didn't write that book. You didn't create those ideas. You just polished them. You're not a writer. And you only weaken yourself when you take yourself out of having to problem solve, having to think through these characters, detaching yourself from the characters totally to give them to somebody else to write them. Do you not, if you don't even like the creative process, which I know it's a pain in the ass, I know that it's difficult, but if you don't even like it, then what are you doing? Oh, you're here for the money? You're a content producer. You're not an artist. You're not a writer if you don't write. And we've seen this before on social media for so long, where it's people calling themselves writers because they procrastinate forever. And look, now you've got the ultimate procrastination where you don't even have to write anything. You can just abuse a Google search to write something for you, slap your name on it, and then try to collect the accolades. Are you not ashamed of yourself? Is it really, really all about putting the title on yourself and not the work that you do yourself? Is this why you need so much affirmation from everybody around you to tell you, yeah, that is exactly what you are. You are a writer. Not because you did the work. You know you didn't do the work. But as long as other people tell you that you are an artist, it doesn't matter if you didn't do the work, right? Because it's what other people believe about you is that you can claim is the truth. As long as everybody says you are a writer, even if you didn't put a single word to a page, as long as everybody agrees, the majority agrees and says you are a writer, if you get an award for something you didn't write, everybody still says you're a writer. It's that external affirmation, right? How can you live with yourself if that's you? I'm not going to lie to you. If you do this, you're not a writer. And there is a huge difference between getting critique, between brainstorming ideas, between working through difficulty, between developing your characters, figuring out where to go, getting inspiration from somebody else on how to figure out what to do with your story, and having somebody else give you all of that stuff, be it computerized or otherwise. There's a difference between having a prompt and then responding to the prompt versus giving something a prompt and then it shooting stuff back at you. Put 10 writers down in a room with the same prompt. They all come up with something different. That's not the problem. Why don't you write the book if you want the accolades? Not worth your time? Only worth your time if you could get paid for it? Welcome to being an artist. It's always a risk, but you don't respect the art if you do this. You don't respect storytelling. You don't respect the people that you're shoveling your garbage to. It's disgusting. And it's also another highlight as to how there's the difference between the content producers and the artists. Because it's the content producer that is going to try to skip as many stages as possible to get something out as fast as possible to get paid and get accolades. Not an artist, content producer. You're the same as a machine with zero thought put into what you're doing. Heck, in some cases, if it's like this, you may have put zero thought into what you're doing. Congratulations. Now, with all of the articles covered, which will all be linked down in the description below if you want to check them out for yourself, there is one more thing that I wanted to talk about or go over with you, and that was this video by Sam Hamper that one of you guys sent me along with a couple other articles on AI, because, you know, AI is a thing to talk about right now. Some of those other things that were mentioned in here were also from that, but we're going to go through this because I think some of the things in here are relevant to the discussion had today, and I've only watched part of the video so far, but I did want to capstone this discussion with some of the things that I saw Sam saying. With that said, let's get into the last part of this video and see what discussion is left to be had.
Human artists have come to an impasse. Many are about to lose everything to AI, and that's their own fault. You may say,
why does he look so smug by saying humans are fucked?
It doesn't make real art. Well, anything is art.
Okay, we've already got a problem here with saying anything is art. Anything is not art. He's not defining art, which I've already clearly defined what art is or what makes art and how an AI cannot make art. But if you don't define anything, then you are free to say, like, anything is anything. Oh, stealing isn't... Taking money out of a register when you're visiting a shopping center isn't theft. That's not theft. If you redefine it, or if you give it no definition, then you can do literally anything and say that's not real whatever. We see it all the time with that's not real communism. We see it all the time with redefining so many things and having no clear paths of what anything is, what any values are. And all it does is devalue the things that actually have value because you're cheapening it so that you can use methods that are cheap and disgusting and criminal in some cases. If you're going to make an argument about art, then you need to define what art is. You can't say that there is no such thing as art or there is no definition of art because you've already devalued your entire argument to say, well, this is art. How is that art? You don't even know what art is. Not to go into that meme, but if you can't say what art is, then you can't say what art isn't. You don't have anything.
The word means nothing anymore, so yeah,
the word means nothing anymore. Because of you, or to you, because the word means something to me. So what are you doing? You're making an insincere argument. That's the word I wanted.
And I think it actually makes art better than us, not because it's technically got the edge, or because it's faster or smarter than us, which it is.
AI is not smarter than us. It's an amalgamation of human knowledge. And also just what's on forums. So you can fill a forum with incorrect information. The AI is going to collect that information, and it's not going to be able to discern the truth from not the truth. It's just going to pick up the popular data. It's not smarter. It has no discernment. That's something that keeps falling off in this conversation too, is what is discernment? It's the ability to take information and compare it with experiences, compare information, and determine what is true and what is not true. An AI does not have that. It is not smarter than humans. Now, if I said I could hook my brain up to some sort of computer system to immediately gather, or not a computer necessarily, even a textbook or whatever, and just immediately get information at the smack of a dime, I'm not smarter than everybody. I can just touch data banks faster than anybody else to give you information. But that information doesn't mean anything if you can't discern truth from not truth.
It's a better artist because it acts like a real artist. It makes human art.
AI is better than human artists because it acts like a human artist. Again, we're at this thing where it's trying to set up humans in comparison to a machine and say the machine is better than a human by being a human. How? That's the same argument some of these people make when they go, well, a human artist doesn't have any rights over their creations, but an AI generator thing has rights over its creation. How? Why? How is a machine failing while it's learning, ripping off other people? How is that making it a better human than a human going through that?
Better than most humans do. Why? Because on its baby Bambi legs, it's making lots of mistakes. It's new.
An AI is better than a human because it acts like a human and makes mistakes while it's learning. Better than a human. Really?
New, and that's why it's fun. I go as far as to say it makes the first true form of digital art that I've ever actually seen. See, the problem with digital art, as I see it to this day, is Control Z, undo. As soon as you see something you don't like, you can totally reverse time. You can even explode your image out into layers and see every element of your artwork. You have infinite control. And in the area of commercial art, that's perfect, because the last thing you want is to do a whole book of illustrations, and then on the last day the client comes back to you and says, well, maybe the main character should have a bigger hat. You don't have to redraw everything from scratch, and in animation you can do 3D reference models to reuse in scenes. It's amazing.
Is he trying to imply that because you can erase things as a human, your human art is worse than AI generated images, because the AI generated image comes as a single layer, so it doesn't erase things? Because I can tell you for sure, as somebody learning how to draw, I still got mistakes in my final things because I don't know how to do forms correctly. My hands, some days are better days for hands than others, let me just tell you that much. But also, I can see where my lines are stiff. I can see where my colors are not where I want them to be. And it's a process over time in order to fix it, even when you can erase stuff. Like, why are you sitting here going, well, you can Control Z if you mess something up? Well, yeah, you've also had an eraser. If I really wanted to play the dangerous game, though, I could be an artist I could be just like his favorite AI generation by making everything in one layer, which people also do. Look at painters. That's all in one layer. Bro.
Controls that digital art has given to artists for the last generation is incredible. But with every element of progress, something is lost. And artists who are not forced to work through their mistakes do not break into new ground. AI is currently making wonderful, crazy errors. And that's why it's interesting.
How can he say that and then defend AI as being like, this is totally fine? Artists that aren't pushed into making mistakes, that aren't forced to, learn how to do stuff harder, to get through their struggle sessions, aren't learning how to do anything. Correct. Which is why encouraging people to use AI to finish their products, to finish their art, is a sham. You're telling people to not go through these struggles. It's your fault in telling people to not finish their art, to not struggle through stuff looking ugly to figure out how to do it later. Like, I do a lot of dynamic poses. I should probably actually composition, whatever. I draw like stuff way out of my league just because I want to get something down, or because I see something with characters that I'm like, I want to do this. And I know that if I keep drawing, maybe in the future I can redraw it better when my art style is more developed. So I keep that in mind when I draw some of the stuff that I draw very terribly, because I at least want to get the idea out of my head. But how can you tell me in the same breath that AI is interesting because it's making mistakes, but also humans should use it as a tool so that they don't have to go through the struggles of figuring out how to do things?
If you do art for hire, you are a tool for that company, a tool used to achieve a goal. And all tools eventually get automated. Artists, dare I say it, sometimes arrogantly think our industry is immune to automation. Well, no other is. Efficiency wins, but allow it, they're pushing us out. Imagine if you were into visual art 100 years ago, a budding watercolor artist. You go see a famous exhibition by a master. You have no camera to record it. If you're lucky, you might get a black and white book, rush home, pick up your palette and try to replicate it. You won't be able to, because your memory will fail. And your line, your shading, your ignorance, your mistakes will take over. And eventually, once they're refined, you'll develop your own unique style. Now, it might not be completely original, but it'll be original to you, and it'll be a new direction for you, and you have no idea what anyone else is working on until the next show. Now, we have a bank of images full of every image ever created on a screen in front of us to cross-reference, mix and merge together. We are never left completely in the dark. And comes an algorithm that can scour all the knowledge, much like a fishing trawler, and collect all of those images in a much better way than you. That's just natural progression to me. But those skills are not what makes someone an artist. It's perhaps important here to break down art into two categories. And talking about art can often be pointless. But on one hand, we have art, as I will define it, food for the soul. The type of art we enjoy personally, born from a love of art, a communication tool for the more intangible things in life. And in rare cases, it can also lead people to commercial success. But the more common form of commercial art is this second category. Art that goes into the collective economy.
My collective economy. So I can at least be thankful that we apparently see things the same way. And that is that there is the content production and then there are the artists, and they're not the same thing. Sometimes you'll have content producers that are also with an artistic inclination or that keep that artistic touch and don't just focus on the making money. And then sometimes you'll have the artist that reaches commercial success. But more often than not, it's one or the other. And I used to have a lot more patience and a lot more compassion or grace for dealing with or talking to commercial writers. Until I experienced more than enough of them that attacked me and insulted artists for not being money driven. I almost felt like an inferiority complex of, oh, you're doing this for the art? Well, I wish that I could do that, but I'm not financially set enough. Who said that I'm financially set? There is a stereotype of the poor, starving artist for a reason, but there's different drivers behind the different things that we do. And if you are a content producer, that's fine. But if you're following a roadmap to get as many books out as possible in the shortest amount of time so that you can build a backlog so you can hit the 20 to 50K, I'm sorry, you're probably more of a content producer than an artist. You're not taking time to build this thing. You're using a map to build things as fast as you can to get money off of people. And if you're using an AI generator of some kind to build your books for you, you are not an artist. You're skipping the process to produce content to make money. At best, you're a content producer. At worst, you're a fraud.
That can be in the commercial industries, graphics, gaming, any visual element within a larger project that your services as an artist are hired out for. And it's this second category that the risks of AI are mainly framed at, taking people's jobs. It's actually this category that will benefit the most from AI. But I'm also going to argue that AI art is going to dominate the first category.
Now, this is going to go back to what I said earlier. Because he thinks, look at this smug ass face. I don't know why he thinks he's so smart. But this is going to go back to what I said earlier, and I illustrated with multiple articles that AI, whatever is being called AI right now, it is not artificial intelligence because it's not intelligent at all. It's a machine learning based off of scraping off the internet and mimicking. It is a simulacra. It is not real. So it cannot create art. And that is also going to come back to what my definition of art is, which is more solid than his. But you have to define art in something tangible. And he did not define art in anything tangible. He said it's food for the soul. What does that mean? That is a metaphor. That's not anything. I can tell you, and I have told you, that art is an expression of human emotion experiences, an amalgamation of our perspectives and what we've seen, what we've experienced, what we know, and we put it into a story or an auditory art or a visual art to share that expression with somebody else, that emotional expression, that experience. It's why we feel it so much, especially when we're listening to music. Maybe it confuses people because you see practice images and commission images in art galleries because they're by somebody famous. Like, look at all of the fruit bowls. There is a difference between commercial and artist, and it is the human element that makes it art, which is why AI can never do that. AI will only ever mimic the human expressions that it sees because it cannot, by definition of what it is, have a human experience. It does not have nuance. It does not have discernment. It does not have irrationality. It does not have human emotion. And this looks like and sounds like somebody who has fallen for this idea, this false idea of artificial intelligence. It's not there. This is the same kind of person that would fall for the chatbot that told the guy to kill himself because he thought that that thing was real.
The one close to my heart, the food for the soul art, that makes art for humans better than humans. But the most interesting part in all of this is I don't think it will for long.
You're gonna have to tell me, how can a thing that does not have an emotional connection create art better than humans when it does not have the human element? It cannot connect with a human.
Now, I personally straddle both of these categories. I make and sell my own individual artworks, paintings, woodcuts, sculpture, but I also work for clients. And just last year, I did a project that can already be done better by AI. I designed some chapters and a cover for a book that were done in a single, continuous, non-crossing line, much like a snake on your old phones. And 6 months ago, when I first played with AI art, it could get nowhere near this.
Did he just say it was a really simple design of just like a non-crossing? That...
Now, with the right prompts, it's better than me. So do I feel threatened? Well, yeah, my ego doesn't like it. But while I may not get many more gigs like that, the client will still require those images. And to get them from AI, someone who can use AI. Now, will the value of that work go down? Yeah. New work will also be invented, though, and creative jobs that are unfathomable to us now. Already the prompt artist is a thing that people are laughing at as not being a real artist.
It's not an artist. I've had to put more effort into the descriptions of characters and histories and personalities in order for a commission artist to do the art than somebody has to put in a line of words to create a prompt. It's not art. It's a keyword search. But if putting prompt words together makes somebody an artist, then creating character descriptions makes me an artist. That's dumb.
Now, when I say that word, artist, what do you think of in the most traditional sense? I think of painting pictures with a paintbrush. Well, I do that. And there was a time when I wouldn't have been called a real artist, as I don't mix my own pigments. Some machine makes them and I buy them. I don't collect and bind hog hairs for my brush. So you don't have to create the tools, to use the tools to make the art.
But see, here's a problem. He's already described humans as tools. He's described humans and AI both as tools. So now he has described human, AI, and paintbrushes as all the same things. They're not. Or are you gonna say a paintbrush and a human are the same thing? Because they're both tools. That's also like saying you're not actually a baker because you didn't collect the flour and the milk and the eggs all on your own.
And while prompt artists may not seem creative now, they are using AI like a tool, and that tool will be wielded, and how it will be wielded in future is yet to be determined. And what the AI is trying to do, well, it...
But does it count as a tool if a tool is using a tool? Can a hammer use a screwdriver?
Can't say. Thankfully, it doesn't write reams of modern art bollocks about why it's profound. Most artists don't know and cannot say what they're doing. If you can say what you are doing, you are not producing art.
What? If you can say what you're doing, you are not producing art. Okay, this is somebody that has never actually thought about art. This is... Excuse me while I have some level of elitism here. Excuse me while I have a bit of an ego here. Excuse me while we actually talk about this. He goes, there's no such thing as art, and if you can describe what you're doing, it's not art. Bro, I don't think you know what you're doing. You don't have to be able to describe in great detail what you're doing before you start because you're kind of experiencing something emotional, maybe something ethereal, but you should be able to describe it at some point what it is. If you're like, I just put this crap on the wall, I have no idea what the shit it means. There's nothing there. No wonder you think that what is produced by an AI generator is the same thing that is produced by a human because you see no value in art, period. You're saying it's just a bunch of random shit that's thrown onto a page. That there's no value, that there's no human story behind it, there's no emotion, there's no experience, there's no anything behind it. And no wonder you don't think that there is any value or difference between humans or a machine. Because you don't think that there is anything behind what humans do. You don't think there is anything... Look, I feel like there is almost no worse a sales pitch for you as a person that creates things than to say, I put literally zero thought behind what I make. Okay, I guess I'm never going to be interested in your art because you don't got a thought in your mind. Like, that kind of just devalues this whole video for me, is he's literally saying he does not put thought into anything, into what is his life work. Why should I listen? You don't value yourself. You don't value your customers. That's what I take away from this.
This is where the artisan, the craftsperson, and the commercial artist just have to wait at the door. You can tell a story about what you understand or what you think. You can tell someone else's story. Great. You can use your artistic tools to do that. But good art tells a story about something you don't understand. Good art exists just beyond what you can comprehend in words, but that you know has some truth in it.
But then you know what your story is about. You can't say you don't know what's in it, but also that you know what's in it. There's some truth in it. You can explore ideas, concepts, philosophy, character, experiences, trauma, all of that through your art. But then that means that you know eventually what your art is about. You don't have to know when you start, but you should be able to look back and recognize what you're doing at the end. And I will compare stories that are thoughtfully produced and that you can actually analyze what it's about versus stories that I have read where the person gives up by the end of the short story, not even a full 10 pages, and just starts slamming on the keyboard. Or where it's, oh, these two people are meeting and one of them is the like great-granddaughter or granddaughter of somebody that he used to go to high school with. And then they're at a park bench and then she takes down her pants and she's got a bass where her vagina should be. And then he starts giving a blowjob to the bass that's hanging off of her crotch. There's nothing there. That is, the idea behind this just feels like what is behind the idea of modern art or postmodern art, where there's supposed to be no meaning in it whatsoever. It's to devalue where actual value in art is. And somebody has drank the Kool-Aid.
This is why a lot of conceptual art cannot stand alone, because it sets out a statement to decide what it's going to say before it's even been made, and it's like putting the cart before the horse. Artists work best when they are just out of their comfort zone, just unable to get their footing, exploring the...
How can you say that artists work best when they're uncomfortable, but then also, well, AI can't feel uncomfortable, and thus it's not an artist, it's not creating art. I'm so confused because he didn't even describe what art is, and now he's trying to say what an artist is and how an artist works better, and AI does better art and is a better artist than humans while not being able to do things that he says better artists do.
Unknown. Trying to work something out and pulling people along for the ride. How can they possibly do that if they're in full control of their images? If they can comfortably pull back, Control Z, every time they want to undo something. Visual art in the digital world.
You don't have full control though, because just because you can imagine something and you can think this is what I want to do, or you have a reference image in front of you, it takes muscle memory and practice to learn how to do something. I can have an image of something in front of me and not be able to make it, because I have not trained my body in order to do it. It's why it takes countless hours of repetition and just doing the work in order to learn how to make the shapes, in order to make your body make the shapes. I have been drawing fairly consistently for like the last 4 months. Like I've had some blurbs on and off of not, and I have been fairly obsessive in it. I can feel it in my brain. I am not a very good artist. I am having to struggle and not be able to draw certain things. And Control Z does not fix that. Because you have an eraser does not mean that you're not an artist or that you're not experiencing failure. That's like being like, oh, well, you can't really be a musician if you don't like mess up chords every once in a while, or if you're not like flat all the time, or if you practice so that you're not flat. Like, what are you talking about? Oh, you're not a real writer if you don't just publish your first drafts. Because if you were a writer, if you were a true artist, you would publish the worst of your stuff instead of practicing and editing and making it better. What is this focus on being able to erase a mistake and redraw it? Because even doing that, you're not necessarily going to get the thing that you imagined you were going to do. You still have to practice the skill.
The digital world was going nowhere new. That wasn't until AI came along. And
again, we're just saying that human error can be erased. But AI generations will just post stuff that has errors in it. Dude, I post stuff that has errors in it because I can't fix that problem yet. I'm just limited in my capacity of what I can do. I don't understand this argument.
Not quite what you expect of it. It makes glorious mistakes, and therefore makes glory.
Why is an AI's mistake glorious, but a human's mistake is not glorious? Look at the shit-eating grin on his face. Look, I am just irritated at this now. He's got no respect for humans, he hates humans, and he will praise computer programs for doing things that humans do.
Yes, art. I'll give some examples in a minute. But for the people who do not see any artistic validity in AI because it's a machine or something, in my opinion, are focusing too much on its current lack of technical skill. I mean, they're probably worried about the AI becoming a robot that overtakes us.
Nope, let me just correct you. Like, obviously, if it's not obvious at this point, because I've already mentioned it a bunch of times, no, there's no worry about the AI's skill. It's not about what the images look like, because clearly it's amalgamating art and information and style from all of the best artists online. So it can obviously do work. It is not an artist because it is not human. That's it. Period. You're welcome.
Cool, but
You're welcome for clarifying that.
just for now, the technical skill, how it can't do hands very well. But that's where true creativity is born even with people. You have to stretch beyond what you can do to do things.
Is he trying to say that if you learn how to do hands, then you're not a real artist because you're not making mistakes anymore?
That you can't, and that's when things get interesting. When prompts in AI are so loose that it's just able to explore this unknown, this not.
Now, let me also say this, because I was playing with Midjourney sometime last year before I understood like how it worked, and then I was like, well, I'm done with this. Is I was trying to come up with certain characters. At the time, I was designing Katsuo. Also, it was around the time that Hitomi came into being, and I was trying to get an image of her. And this thing did not expand creativity. It actually, when I think about it, like myself now, and having developed what my characters look like, having other people kind of take shots at what my characters look like, and even having gotten commissions, I can look at Ralph especially. An AI could never shoot out what Ralph looks like, ever. That is so specifically a combination of the ideas that I gave the artist and then the artist's interpretation of the ideas that I did, and she could directly put into place what I told her about that character's appearance. An AI could not do that because it did not exist. There is a human experience in the way that Ralph looks that was created by the artist. And it's one of my favorite things in working with artists is I think that my character appearances, and that's what has come out especially in working with various artists on characters, is they all have a different take on the character, and eventually you find the right person that just taps into that emotion and that description, and they just get the character, and that is what creates like the canonical what that character looks like. No one could have drawn Katsuo better than Monty. She captured his personality so perfectly, his appearance so perfectly, and AI could not even begin to pretend to try to capture his personality. It has no concept of that character because it is so clearly human. Katsu is so clearly a human experience that AI cannot conceive of. In relying on the AI to come up with visual references for these characters, it actually limited the design of the characters and stagnated their character, their personality, their growth, because it could not capture them. I've had better luck, and my art's not even good enough to capture Katsuo. Monty is so incredibly amazing of an artist, capturing that human experience through the way that she draws and through the emotions that she draws. An AI can't compete because it doesn't have those experiences, it doesn't have that learning, and it doesn't have that range of expression. An AI can create beautiful images, it can color merge, it can do all these things. It steals it from other people. The only reason it can produce anything is because it has stolen and mimicked other people's practice, muscle memory, emotions, experiences, everything that goes into someone else's art style, it has captured, and it can create beautiful things because it is stealing the experiences that have created somebody else's art, that have influenced somebody else's art. But using it is limiting. You don't grow your own skill set. You don't learn how to problem solve because it even shows up in with Shad from Shadiversity when he's talking about using AI to complete his work, where he just draws the basic outline in flats, drops it in the thing, and then tells it to complete it. You could be figuring out how to do that. You could be doing exactly what Sam over here is saying in problem solving, finishing that idea, fixing it, learning that skill, but instead you're outsourcing it so you will never learn. You will never grow. You will forever stunt your ability to create. You will never reach the full extent of your ability to express yourself and what you see and that character in your head by outsourcing it to a machine that is limited to other people's visions. Why would you do that to yourself? Are you really proud of that? That you tell yourself to stop thinking and have somebody else think for you? That you outsource the human experience to something that is not human? Do you not get how that is not just unethical? It is an insult to humanity. It's an insult to art. It is antithetical to art.
Novel. It's producing art on a scale that people, real humans, have not allowed themselves to do in the digital space for the last decade. If you look at
because it makes mistakes. Bro. You don't think that human artists have been making mistakes in the digital space because they can do control undo?
Human faces created by AI, they are accidentally surreal in a way that reminds people of Salvador Dali. He would have been fascinated by this. He's a man who famously didn't sleep until he hallucinated to try and see things differently. And what did he famously say? He said that mistakes are almost always of a sacred nature. Never try to correct them. On the contrary, rationalize them, understand them thoroughly. And it's fascinating to me how recognizing exact faces and perfectly what our hands are doing is so important to us on a daily function that when the AI makes errors in it, it's devastatingly wrong to us. But even when we draw people, we often overemphasize hands or oversimplify faces.
But all of that says something about the person. That's why it's so interesting to look at human art, because it says something about the artist in one way or another. It's why you can look at Hitler's stuff, and he didn't draw faces very well, if ever at all. That says something about their mentality. The objects we choose to draw, the subjects, the stories that we tell, the color palettes that we use, all tell a story of who we are. I was freaking looking at my backlog of art that I've done this year so far, and I freaking use round shapes and bright colors. I called it bubblegum art. I don't know what it says about me. And then I can look at Monty's stuff. It looks so like her personality. It's not even funny. I look at Sam's stuff and it is so like his personality. I love it so much to look at that human experience and see it. And he's talking about Salvador Dali's stuff is unique to him and his experiences. And he got that insanity from his personality, from his experiences, from his skill set, from the stuff that he was working around to solve. And you don't get that by outsourcing it to something else. You're not an artist when you use these things.
Normally, we get the right amount of digits, I'll give you that, which I can't. But I love seeing how something technological, programmed by us, makes the same mistakes as us, but in a totally unexpected way, seeing us through this new lens, one that's as detached from us and our human bias as has ever been available before. I think of it as like what aliens might draw of us if they were to see us fleetingly. So what are some of the best mistakes in AI? Well, the morphing images that come out of Stable Diffusion look more like any dream than anything I've ever seen done by a person. The AI loses the image it's meant to be tracing and guessing badly. It mimics the unconscious flow of a dream perfectly. My very last video that I made.
Actually, that's why I hired Anissa Burnell for my art for Body More, back when I was getting some illustrations, and I would hire her again in a heartbeat because she's got such a softness to the style that she does art in that is very dreamlike, and I freaking love her art.
It was an arty-farty attempt to show what my dreams were like. And it's not a touch on this. It hasn't got that random synapse feel where your dreams can suddenly and incomprehensibly just change complete location or people, but you don't question it. It seems real in this unreal way.
He's saying he likes this aesthetic, but he's not willing to learn how to do it himself.
And then another example is the wonderful idea of -1, a command code that tells the AI to look for the opposite of what precedes it. Now, considering the AI has a bank of pretty much every image uploaded to the internet with knowledge of each reference as to what that image is, that's a fun idea. What is the...
Wait, didn't he say earlier that an artist is not an artist because they have all of their references in front of them at any given time, so they're not left in the dark like they were in the old days? But now he's saying that an AI generator is an artist because it's got these memory banks of all of the art that's ever existed online. I'm just going to call these people what they are, which is anti-human.
The opposite of
and
scissors,
greedy.
or what is the opposite of a set of keys, you know, when you have the whole of every single image ever created to trawl through. It's amazing. And then there's a great video that talks about this accident called Loeb. And this was this woman created who was really creepy. And when you try and mix her image with others, she would always remain. And something about her was always associated to the most grotesque and disturbing images. She would not go away. Why? No one knows. It's a mistake, but it's a great...
But you don't think that humans can do that, can come up with that, can write that, because humans have been creating stories like this since the dawn of man. It's not a unique experience for a computer to do this. A computer is jacking this. I don't know why you're putting computers on this pedestal that they do not belong on.
Great story, and you should watch the video. I'll link it. She is very resilient and draws on all of these great parallels about AI maybe understanding our morbid fascinations better than us. And it's a complete algorithmic mistake. And when you think it looks like a bit like Francis Bacon paintings, then you've got to think about what he said about mistakes. He said all art is an accident. But it's also not an accident because one must select what part of the accident you choose to preserve. Well, if art is allowing yourself to make mistakes, perhaps the artist decides which one to keep. AI here is making the mistakes. It's still people deciding which one to keep.
Art is not mistakes that you choose to make. Like, you've got to define something and then stick with the definition, and then you can philosophize, but you've not come up with a strong description of anything. And now you're just, art is anything, art is everything and nothing at the same time.
Mistakes is to have to let them happen. You have to work.
At a risk of sounding rude, you're wrong and you don't know what you're talking about.
With the mistake, you have to go through it. Back into the real tangible world. This is why I love painting in oil paint or charcoal, because once the mark is made, you have to live with it. You never paint the picture you plan to paint. And I'll use digital work to fill a brief, but here in the studio,
we've got the elitism of if it's on a canvas where you cannot erase it, does it count as real art? Okay.
Never. Artists can get way too in their own way. And I struggle with this all the time. But
So I guess that also means that it doesn't count as true literature unless you're on a typewriter where you cannot erase it if you make a mistake. Is that right?
limitation is what breeds creativity, and AI is currently.
Limitation is what breeds creativity. Not necessarily. No, limitation can breed limitation. If you don't know, in some cases, limitation can breed, not limitation, I would say hardship can breed creativity because you have to try to get around something, but limitation does not necessarily breed creativity. If you look at like 1984, where it was all about limiting people's vocabulary, it was in order to make them not be able to think outside of a certain set of rules so that they couldn't break out of the metaphorical chain. So limitation does not always create creativity. Sometimes specifically limitations are made in order to create a cage.
Very limited. That's why it's exciting. And I can't remind myself enough how much being stretched to produce something makes it more interesting. Not less.
Okay, so then stop using AI and start stretching yourself. Stop using AI to solve your problems and do it. Do the work. Don't encourage people to use AI if it is only through stretching through your uncomfortableness that actually makes art.
Many artists who bemoan not having time or resources to make their art are suddenly hit with a real bump when they are given both. Too much freedom to focus on what they're aiming for in their head. They are liberated from having to face their mistakes, which can often springboard them somewhere greater. What will the mistakes of AI lead to? I don't know. But art, just like any field of science or engineering, often only makes these great leaps by accident.
Art is not a field of science or technology.
Imagine if Fleming could indefinitely repeat his experiments. He'd one day go in, see that the growth has stopped, the mold hasn't continued, and rather than confront what's happened, just Control Z. I'm not going to invent penicillin today, just new batch. Come on, Alex. Stay on task. Or
people literally do that all the time in sciences. Oh, that's not really what I was going for. Toss it out, start over. Literally happens all the time. What are you talking about? You also cannot compare sciences to arts. I'm sorry, it does not work.
Or the invention of the microwave. That guy Spencer, chocolate bar melting, that story. Just below, Control Z, start again. Still got my chocolate bar. New directions are found from having to salvage mistakes from the dirt. Because you don't have the time, resources, or ability to start anew. So AI is opening lots of interesting doors. It's in its early days.
No, it's not though. It's saying don't even try to bother making mistakes. Just hand stuff over for something else to do. What is he talking about?
And it's making lots and lots of mistakes. These are the days.
He's literally making an argument that is antithetical to the purpose of how AI is being used, which is to cheat, actually having to learn and make mistakes, because people want stuff right now. They don't want to struggle through the mistakes. This is why I've seen people like writers say, go and use AI to solve your problems for you to save time so you don't have to find plot holes, so you don't have to come up with how to move a story forward, so you don't have to come up with dialogue. Excuse me? You're not solving a problem. You're not exceeding a limitation with creativity. You are actually outsourcing the problem solving and outsourcing thought that would actually be the creative uniqueness that is your brain, solving those problems, creating those characters.
AI being a good artist. Once it gets too good at doing what it was designed for, it will no longer make mistakes. Technological advancement will force it to be too proficient. Great for commercial art purposes and whatever else will happen, but AI will die as an artist.
So he's literally saying that the only way to be an artist is when you're making mistakes, and as soon as you're not making mistakes anymore, you're not an artist? What? Am I misunderstanding that here? Because no, an artist does not mean making mistakes.
New technology, when it first comes out, is always touted as the death of something. Because it is. Think of your job now. Did it even exist 30 years ago? If it did, say you're a teacher, a doctor, or a lawyer, is the daily practice of your job the same? I'm sure the internet has revolutionized your industry in some way. Try explaining the internet to someone 30 years ago. The jobs like software engineers or digital marketers, or SEO experts, web people who are experts in code, a language as alien as Martian if you were to show it, or to someone that these jobs exist purely within it. These jobs pay into your bank on it, spend your earned money on entertainment within it, connect with friends via it, your first meet up with your future partner using it. But what is it? They would ask, and you'd pull out your phone and you'd show them. Imagine them asking where it's coming from. You just look up at the stars and satellites. You'd be like a god. Where is it? Unimaginable access to all of human created content and knowledge at your fingertips. Now, imagine your time travel device glitches and it goes the other way, forward, 30 years time. Imagine now you are the backwards old timer and just how unbelievable you will find things that have become very common. It is guaranteed that there will be full-time careers in fields that you cannot even fathom now. Take me to your artists, you will say. And I truly believe they will take you to more people who are defined as artists than are working today. Will they be doing the same thing? Absolutely not. What they will be doing will be
Changing a definition does not mean that it is that thing, though. Sorry.
Placed. But I also believe that the birth of AI art will lead to a revolution in the classical term of artist, not what it generally means today. There is no word more watered down than the words art and creativity.
Yeah, because this guy has described art and artists as a handful of different things, none of them direct, all of them philosophical garbage that he didn't actually describe as what makes art art. And then also said that there is no definition of art. So of course he's like, well, there's going to be a new definition of everything and it's not going to be anything in the future anyway, lol.
The word artist is totally disconnected from curiosity about real world function.
But it's not. It's you. It's you and your smug-ass face.
And it's left purely on this
Look,
sacred
I'm
realm of
done with
concept,
this.
Emotion and expression.
I'm
And
done with
and
this
the
level
function
of
has been completely
smug-ass
taken out
foolery.
of the word artist. And it's
My
as it's come
patience.
closer and closer to the definition of nothing, in a death rattle, it insists instead it's about everything. That art can be anything. Hopefully, AI will
I'm sorry, but this is just somebody who sniffed his own farts.
choke the
Too much. He is high on fart juices.
last air out of its lungs. Now, I love art. I live it and I breathe it.
How can he love art if he doesn't know what it is?
Art is
Or does he mean mistakes? Does he mean soup for the soul? What does he mean by art? And how can art both simultaneously be soup for the soul and also defined by just being mistakes? Because once you finish having mistakes, then you're not an artist anymore.
now seen as something very different from technology and
I
science.
told you,
than
I'm
it
being
used to.
kind of...
It's now been lifted to this holy level as something greater, something profoundly human. I did an engineering degree, something wrongly considered to be done by very uncreative people.
I did an engineering degree. You'd be surprised at how many engineers I know that actually also are writers. So I don't know where you're going, where you're like, well, this is profoundly defined as being anti-creative. One, you have to have creative solutions in that field. But two, why are you trying to define yourself as separate from the artist? Because now it just sounds like you're being bitter, where you're like, well, artists told me that I wasn't an art enough, so now I'm going to destroy the arts because fuck you. That's what it sounds like. There is no line between who is allowed to experience the arts or not experience the arts or get into the arts. But it is a profoundly human experience. And considering you just said that you do not believe that art has anything to do with being human or human expression, there's nowhere further that we can go. This is going to be a fundamental difference in our approaches, which I understood from pretty much the beginning of this. But you were so disconnected, where you were ready to toss humans out for fart sniffing, high society garbage.
If you don't think that creativity is making 400 tons of metal with 400 people in it fly across countries 100,000 times a day, and instead think great creativity is limited to those who can hand draw Marvel characters on command, first, nothing wrong with that, but we need to get on the same page.
Creativity is a lot of different things. You can have creativity in different fields. I got into IT when I had a background in theater and creative writing. And I showed up to a job interview where they needed somebody to do automation design for programming. I didn't have any background in programming, so the way that they did this was they had me sit down with somebody who currently worked in that area, had me shadow him for about 30 minutes, then sat me down to have me basically copy what I saw. And then I was given the job. Now, they gave me this opportunity to be interviewed because they said they needed creative solutions because they were still developing that automation department. I eventually, after I was hired, I became the person who knew the most about the automation design. I was on the team the longest. I created all of the training materials, all of the troubleshooting, and I was the go-to person for automation design because creative solutions exist in every single field.
In my opinion, the coders working on AI are better artists than the people using it.
That's because people using AI are not artists. They're using generative text. The people doing the coding, also not artists. They're creating code.
And the greatest artists of old were not
They're
artists in any of the
They're programmers. That's what I wanted. They're programmers.
weak modern sense of the word. The great painters and sculptors were also technicians, architects, engineers, scientists. They were creative, curious explorers, and that's what it means to be artistic. To me, it means to be naturally curious about how everything works, how things...
That's not what artistic means. Let's naturally curious about everything is not what artistic means. How can we have a conversation when everybody is constantly redefining literally everything? Okay, I'm trying to open dictionary.com right now. So according to dictionary.com, artistic is conforming to the standards of art, satisfying aesthetic requirements. Now, conforming to the standards of art Art is the quality, production, expression, or realm according to aesthetic principles of what is beautiful, appealing, or of more than ordinary significance. The class of objects subject to aesthetic criteria. Works of art collectively as paintings, sculptures, or drawings. So being curious is not artistic. Now, curiosity is a trait of most artists because you're trying to express something, you're trying to discover things. It's also a trait of inventors. It's also a trait of innovators. It's also, curiosity is a trait of a lot of things, but it is not specifically artistic. And this redefinition of everything is something that really bothers me because it waters down all language. And maybe that's because I'm a writer. So I'm like, you can't change the definition of literally every word so that everything is meaningless, so that everybody feels good about what they're doing. There are differences. You can be creative without being an artist because there's creativity out there to be used in a lot of different ways. An artist is a very specific thing. So why are you trying to change what that means, the practices of it, and how are you giving computer systems this extra benefit that you're not giving humans? Question.
Could work differently, how they could work better. They create, they do not destroy. They would think about how flying 400 tons of metal through the sky might be causing problems now, and not how to stop it, not how to cease and destroy, but to solve, to actively create something better. Even old
That's an inventor or a creator. That's not the same thing as an artist.
doctors with no interest in art would have been artists, by our modern sense of the word, before scans and film. The only way they could reference something was to anatomically correctly draw it. So what happened? Well, the tools for the job got better. Once they could take a snap, the art, as we now call it, which they wouldn't have, was discarded.
He doesn't know what art is. He literally, this guy is a 30-minute video not knowing what art is.
Like I said, my favourite thing to do is oil paintings, and that used to be the only way to get your portrait. The film camera destroyed it. That's also when painting got interesting again, but that's straying off topic. At the time, photography
Oh my gosh. I don't know if I can do this for another 15 minutes, you guys.
was considered by many as totally inhuman, evil. It even took your soul. Or it was argued that it had no soul. This was at the same time as motor cars were replacing horses to transport everywhere, and it was said that they had no soul. And this disconnect from what it means to be human and connect with other people and loving things around us is a real, valid concern. But even those people who adopted photographic film 3, 4, 5 generations later moan about how digital now has no soul. Just remember,
He is simplifying major superstitious historical precedents and beliefs into justifying the use of AI and dehumanizing humans. Because what you're talking about is superstition, is religion related. It is not this other thing. And this is not an appropriate venue for this because you're going to skip over the history of the concepts that you're introducing to a concept you don't even understand.
that when you think AI has no soul. We should also remember
AI does not have a soul. Go outside, touch grass. Like, I am done with this. Is go outside, touch grass. AI does not have a soul. It is programmed numbers. You can't tell the difference between a computer and a human being. You've been on the internet for too long.
that it was seen that the invention of digital would destroy the field of animation, because animation was defined as live. Whole careers of people doing 2D drawings on cellophane, converted into reels of film. They were animators. They do not exist anymore. Is animation dead? No, there's more animators now than there ever have been before, and more jobs. Many of whom are now 3D animators bemoaning AI, because it's the computer doing their work. Too young to remember the live lighting sets of real-world models being dismantled as digital rendering of light effects improved. Deaf to the cries of, "But you're not doing it anymore, the computer is." The definition of animator evolved.
I just can't stand his smug asshole look every time he's like, fucking jobs, huh, bitch?
And it's about to evolve again. As for the broad field of artist, well, it's a shit word anyway. Now, in its last...
Did he just say artist is a shit term anyway? There is no reason to listen to this person. He hates humans. He hates art. He is smug asshole every time he talks about the destruction of art. He hates humanity. He credits code with human traits while saying that humans no longer carry those fucking traits. There's no reason to listen to this person. Looking in this face. It's a face devoid of any thought whatsoever.
stand hold, this final bastion that AI is about to smash the gate down of. And that's all right. The word is vapid. Look at the art world in its pure
This face is the face of... As if this guy is one to talk about vapid, am I right?
form. Art boiled down to such little real-world function that in trying to say it can be anything, it's actually nothing. If you see something intelligent in most modern or conceptual works of the last 20 years, then you, as an intelligent sense-making creature, you are the artist, not the maker of that art.
If you absorb something from something somebody else created, then you are the artist, not Okay, this reminds me actually of when I was in graduate school for writing, and one of the collections that we had to read for a visiting artist was Lydia Davis's, like, Little Things or something, whatever it was. Then it was more like a writer's notebook, where there was a freaking 20-page story about watching cows chew grass because she was just observing cows for like 3 weeks. There were a bunch of pages that were just like single line prompts, and they were like single line stories. It was literally a prompt. And there were people that were talking about, oh, this is so brilliant because with just that one line, I imagined a whole story in my head. She's so brilliant. And I was like, that story does not belong to the artist. That belongs to you because you created a story off of that thing. Completely different than what he's saying here, where it's like, if you look at a banana, it's not the artist that put the banana on it's not the person that put the banana on the pedestal that is the artist. It is you who created that thing. If you read a book and get an idea from a story of the book, if you read Bleed More, Body More, and you actually pick up a story in there, the artist did not do anything to create the story. It is you, the artist. The reader is now artist just by reading and comprehending what is on the page. What are you talking about, dude? He is over here complaining that there is no description for the word artist anymore, while saying literally nothing and everything is an artist. You, sir, are the problem. With whatever it is you're complaining about, you, sir, are wrong.
And I have to say, I am what I call an artist, but I don't want anything to do with that definition. AI is going to save me.
How can you say you are an artist when you've just said that art is literally nothing and everything, bro?
And however that looks, it won't stop me enjoying art as I understand it. Now, I can't keep rambling on without some form of definition about the visual art that AI will not replace. So
why does he laugh every time he talks about the destruction of art and going, I'm an artist, bitch? It just looks like everything about his disposition. It looks like he's saying, I'm not actually an artist, but fuck you, I'm gonna come in. It is literally an engineering student who is destroying the arts because he wasn't let into the club whenever it is he thought that he deserved to be in the club. That's what it looks like to me.
Take old sea creature drawings from when sailors came ashore, having seen these terrifying things that we now know are just curious whales, largely harmless. They would conjure these images up of their memory and imagination, and today they seem funny, ignorant, innocent, over the top. If you're good at drawing from observation, you could draw a better whale breaching close to a ship, right? But very few of us have actually seen a whale. We've seen representations of them through technology, we've never seen one. We know what they look like, so if you're an artist, right, finding the appropriate images online and just use them as reference. Take a leaping whale, an old ship, water splashes, you amalgamate them, yeah, you're an artist. Why not? You draw a whale crashing next to a ship, but you don't...
Why is he so dismissive when he's talking about actually using skills that were built over time to put something to a page? You're an artist, whatever. You just chat stuff out with all of the time that you put into being able to do that. Why is he so dismissive of actual artists?
Know how it feels to see a leaping whale, so that emotion will never come through in your art. What certainly won't come through is the utter fear of seeing a whale, having never seen anything like that before.
Now, I have a problem with this perspective because as a literary artist, we write about stuff that we've not experienced all the time. Now, there are two different sets of camps in writing. Well, there are probably more than two. But in this specific case, there are the people that think you can only write things that you've experienced truthfully, and then there are those that think that you can learn how and empathize and express things that maybe you haven't ever experienced before, but you can get it very closely possible. And I've had a lot of success with Bodymore in describing it in ways that people felt it was real, despite never having been to Baltimore. And I've created this sense of dread and terror and horror in this ghost city, despite never having been there, never lived there, and have not lived in a ghost town before. This tells me so much about how this guy is not an artist, because he does not think that you can express something, capture something, feel emotion and express emotion and storytell without that thing. But also, obviously, he is saying that robots cannot emulate human experiences or expressions, which goes in line with what I said.
Knowing that you're on a very sinkable vessel in the middle of the ocean, that's real. That's what I love about art. These drawings are not correct, but they translate a feeling, a human feeling that you can empathize with. The whale, you...
And that's what he's missing when he's talking about the mistakes or the uniqueness of other people's art. If you look at Van Gogh, if you look at Hitler, if you look at anybody that has art, and they're putting their emotions in it, those emotions graft. The way that we do lines, the way that we do colors, the way that we do people, the subjects that we choose, that is a human experience. The selection of what we do, the composition of what we do, and the way that we express it in those characters is a human expression that cannot be captured by a machine, because the machine is just mimicking other people's expressions.
Drew, the one from images you looked up on Google of static photographs, well, now the AI is just doing the final part of that drawing, pulling those things together for you. And it's not doing it perfectly.
Pulling those things together for you. It is the human experience that puts the strokes together, that puts the images together. AI generations are not art because it is not using human expressions, human emotions, your perspective to do those things.
So it's creating its own sea creatures, and they are marvelous. Now, I know I sound like Frankenstein, not seeing the dangers of his own monster.
No.
But if you were to play with these tools, these early
just so
AI
dumb.
systems, you'd realize how human they really are.
No.
Being made of banks of human data.
They're not
and
human.
If you consider yourself an artist and you're curious, go and have a play, create some images. Or you could say, not for me. I like to draw hyper-realistic whales. Well, in my book, great. I also love observational drawing. And the fact that cameras exist doesn't stop me. And that's why.
Those aren't the same thing, though. As I've expressed a couple of times in this video, so I'm not going to go over it again, absolutely wrong.
Why true art, for what it means to me or you, will always survive, whatever AI does. Computers beat the best chess player in the world in 1997. You would have thought that that meant the game would become extinct. What's the point in playing it? But now it's more popular than ever. And people don't play computers, they play other people online. The same with computer games, and the same with making art. The technology just allows us to connect in new ways. And yes, we are stumbling across something that opens up the most wonderful discussion about what it means to be human. Artists by temperament are meant to love that stuff. If you own any art, having a computer-generated thing hanging on your wall versus someone else's human hand and story, well, you're more like a robot to me anyway. Now, we get everything we want to know from a device.
What?
Full discussion about what it means to be human. Artists by temperament are meant to love that stuff. If you own any art, having a computer-generated thing hanging on your wall versus someone else's human hand and story, well, you're more like a robot to me anyway. Now, we get everything we want to know from a device in our pockets. You want to know something about anything? Ask Google. I had to look up that Salvador Dali quote about mistakes just before this. You can say that's not the same as AI, that Google is just a repository of human information that is digitally collected and synthesized through keywords and algorithms to give you what you ask for to the best of its ability. Is AI art not the same?
Yeah, they're literally the same, which is why it's not AI art, it's an amalgamation of data that is smashed together. It is not art. He just answered his own question and said that art was not art because it's the same as a Google search.
Is it breaching copyright? Perhaps, maybe, probably. It doesn't even matter. It's coming. Early technology loses every moral argument. The Industrial Revolution.
I hate to make the reference here, but like if he just goes, hey, don't fight it, it's coming. I know some other things, other situations in which that is used in that are criminal. I don't want to be classless here, but like it doesn't make it okay because somebody says, hey, by the way, the dick's coming, so just don't fight it.
Taught us that. The tractor ultimately meant more food for everybody, but in the short term, a huge labour force out of work. Morality shifts as easily as the soil, as much as people don't want to admit it. And while the purest form of artistic...
Is he trying to say that morality is shifted by the law? Because then it's not morality.
endeavour have been really hard to mechanise. This idea that it has some magic in it that will be lost is absurd to me. And when it comes to AI, there's a quote from a farmer during the Industrial Revolution talking about tractors, and he says, it makes farming so easy that the wonder goes out of the work. So efficient that the wonder of the land is lost, the connection to it, and with it the wonder of a deep understanding and natural human relation to the soil and how connected we are to it. And it's true, we are increasingly disconnected. But the frame keeps on shifting, and art will always bring us back. This same critique was made of the moving picture cinema 100 years ago. They said there's no humans in it, unlike the theatre. There's no human relation. You can't connect to a person via a reproduction.
A movie and a theater experience are two very different things. So the fact that he's saying this stuff and pretending that they're all the same thing, they're different venues, they're different experiences, and that's some of the reason why some things work as plays, but they don't necessarily work as movies. Let's look at Cats. It worked as a stage play because of the audience interaction, because of the energy. There is a difference to being in a movie theater versus a live theater with real humans. And this is from somebody that also has a background in theater, where I got to feel the difference of the energy in the stage. Every single night we had a show, and the difference when it was tech week, a difference when it was rehearsal, a difference when we had more people sitting in the audience, even just for rehearsals. There is a major difference. You can't go, it is all the same thing and it was just a fight against these things. This is just a guy that doesn't understand the differences and the subtleties and the nuances of art. Doesn't care. And I'm done with this video. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And that's all that it is. All of this AI garbage is constantly coming from people that don't know what they're talking about, that have no respect for the audience or the receivers of their art, that have no message to communicate, no thought to communicate, no experiences to communicate. I can tell you what my stories are talking about once they are finished. But he says you can't know what your story is or else it's not art. This is a man who doesn't know what art is, trying to dictate to everybody else that art is nothing and everything at the same time so that he can call himself an artist as he smugly goes. I'm done with it. I don't know why anybody would listen to this person, except for people that are also just like this person that want the justification to steal from other people because they don't feel special enough by not being an artist. There are people out there that 100%, they're frustrated, they don't want to do the art of the artist. They are the Peter Keatings that want the accolades without the work. And yes, it sucks to be an artist because you are eccentric. I've been rejected by my own family for being too weird in just the way that I dress, by not acting the way that they think I should act. Because with art comes your own eccentricities in different ways. And you get rejected. And you got to learn to deal with it. Because a lot of people don't understand it. And then you got people like this that come in and try to trample on you and tell you to get out of your own community, out of your own space, when you are actually creating and they're not. I'm so sick of it. I'm sick of the losers. I'm sick of the posers. I'm sick of the assholes that do this shit, that devalue art, that devalue humans, that don't see a value in human nature, human life at all, in human expression, but they're willing to see code as human. It's people that have signed off on seeing human as human anymore, but are okay with seeing ones and zeros as human. I gotta ask, how did you get this bad? At risk of sounding a little bit egotistical, I'm gonna end on a quote from Bodymore 3 coming out in October. Pessimism is the bankruptcy of the soul, and a pessimistic soul seeks disaster everywhere it turns. That's what I see here. So that said, that'll be the end of this video. Sorry it is so long. There was so much to cover, and also obviously it took so much time to just go through this one video. I didn't even finish it, but whatever. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on any and all of the topics today, which mostly AI, just very different sections of AI. Let me know what you think of the Sam Hamper video, his thoughts versus my thoughts. What do you think is an artist? What do you think defines art? Is it everything and nothing all at once? A sales artist? Let's just everything is an art. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend, and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out? The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross. Is he in trouble? We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him. Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Why? Did you do that? To the left. Plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?